To what extent is water capable of picking up information? What does it perceive? And how does it remember it over time?
Wir haben dann Versuche unternommen, zu sehen, ob sich das Bild.
Then we undertook experiments to find out whether things changed when we put something into the water. You can do that, for example, with stones, or with metal, or even with living things, such as twigs or flowers. Here you see a petal from a flower, a real flower. It was placed in the water. A while later we took a drop of water and we put it on a slide and took a photograph of it after it had dried. And here you can see one of the pictures. And you can see it in this picture. It's the typical image you get when you put a flower into water. You could recognize the flower in every single drop in this glass, of course. That can be reproduced and has significance. And if you were to put a different flower in here, for example, a Sweet William flower, then all the drops of this water would look like Sweet William.
The Israeli scientist Eshel Ben Yaakov uses completely different methods to arrive at the same conclusion.
The order of these plants that we have here can have a very, very strong effect. Not only if I put some leaf into the water, but just the order which is deposited around has a very, very strong effect on the water. And this strong effect causes all the time inside to gases from the atmosphere to be mixed in to form a big network, very complicated network of bubbles, very, very tiny bubbles of gases. And the number of nanobubbles inside here, just to give you an estimate, it's about, depends on the condition, it's about 1,000 times the number of neurons that we have in our brain.
Science and play instinct are often closely connected.
As a scientist, you have to ask yourself, of course, whether there isn't a logical extension of this. What about plants? And so we tried an experiment that we'd like to call lettuce listening to a mobile phone. Here's what we do. We take so-called reference water, that is, water from the institute here, tap water, and you can see that here in the middle it has a dark spot that you can see in the image. Well, it has that in every drop. So now we take the water, which we have in a big pot, and we simply throw in the lettuce, a real head of lettuce. And then we take pictures of it and we can see, aha, that's lettuce. Now the water knows, and you can see it, that there is a head of lettuce in there. Interestingly enough, the dark center has disappeared. This is something we very often see when we put something living into the water. It produces a bright center. The living thing apparently has a way of forming a center. So now we take a second head of lettuce and we let the second head listen to the mobile phone. That means we simply turn on the phone and hold it next to the lettuce for 2 minutes. And we assume that the lettuce has absorbed radiation from the phone. Now we take this head of lettuce and put it into the reference water as well, and we compare the two results. And you can clearly see from the results that the edge is completely different. The middle is somewhat different, so you can see that the lettuce was radiated by the phone and picked up the radiation. It has imparted that information to the reference water, and if we now take pictures of drops from the reference water where we put the lettuce, we can see from the water that this head of lettuce heard the mobile phone. That's apparently the way nature works.
So funktioniert anscheinend die Natur.
Water has a memory. And water has a kind of intelligence, much more than air, you know. Water it's a cosmic thing.
Johann Grande, the waterman of Tyrol, believes that it is possible to transfer information from one sample of water to another without the two of them coming into contact with each other. The process developed by him, so-called water revitalization, is based on the principle of conducting flowing water through a stainless steel container that is filled with revitalized water. The flowing water picks up the information from the still water. But Grande's success has its opponents, who call water revitalization parascientific nonsense. In fact, the process cannot be understood by using conventional scientific means. Nevertheless, more than 300,000 users worldwide rely on his system, from simple households to high-tech industries. Industrial users are not bothered by the critics. They rely on their own experience and results. Conventional water is aggressive and practically eats the pipes from the inside out, which leads to pipes bursting. At the Lietzen mechanical engineering plant in Austria, there seemed to be no solution to the problem.
We had very serious problems with corrosion, and that was reflected in many instances of broken pipes. We now have the situation better under control. At first I really couldn't get my mind around it, because when you look at the container you really can't imagine what good it could do. But based on the fact that we now have fewer instances of broken pipes and all, I'm convinced that it really does help. We monitored the water, and before we installed Grander, the iron content in the heating water was 26 milligrams per liter. 2 months later, the iron had come down to only 0.7 milligrams per liter, which was, of course, excellent for the corrosion. The corrosion stopped.
Does water revitalization make the water less aggressive? Positive results have been seen not only in the case of rust, but also with the accumulation of sludge. No one is sure why, but they are certainly pleased with the results.
And in particular, we can say that the situation with sludge has noticeably improved. We also have records and measurements to prove it.
They know the results, but not the reason. But isn't that good enough? Farmtech is a German company near Karlsruhe that produces plastic parts of all kinds. To maintain high material quality, the plant needs a good cooling system.
We used to fill our cooling system with untreated tap water. Often, within only a couple of months, we'd find that the water had gradually gone bad. We then had to play around with various combinations of chemicals in an attempt to get the water under control. But we had little luck. We found a huge amount of rust in the system. Our lab tests also indicated the presence of a lot of bacteria and algae. All the problems pretty much disappeared when we switched over to the Grander system. We just don't have to deal with these issues anymore. Water is a crucial factor in our production process. We needed process stability, and now we have it. We're not much interested in taking water samples because we're not physicists or chemists. We prefer to stick to what we know best. If you had asked me last year whether such a simple change could have allowed us to use water without chemical treatment, I would have said, no way, not a chance.
Aufrechtzuerhalten ohne Chemie hätte ich gesagt, nein, es funktioniert nicht.
Often water has flowed a long way from the mountain to the valley. There is an old proverb that says, water is not clean until it has flowed over a stone 7 times. There has been practically no research into the question of the importance to water of motion. What does the water pick up along its way, from the air and from its surroundings? Does it bring information with it from inside the earth? Has it absorbed oscillations from minerals and ores? If so, can human beings retrieve it at the mouth of the stream?
One can demonstrate that homeopathy works in the same manner. Up to now, we've taken a series of images in an unsystematic manner, and they reveal that potentialization, shaking and diluting, changes the images. We've done our own experiments with shaking. In this case, we used ultrasound to agitate the water, and we could see that the drops changed. And we could also see that plants grow more rapidly when they are watered with this kind of water. And from that point of view, there can be no doubt in my mind that there is an effect. Because if the image of the drop changes, there has been a change in the informational content. And if the informational content is changed and communicates with the body water from outside or by mixing, then it is also clear that the control function of the body can be different too.
Professor Kröplin's team assigns a high priority to their droplet analysis. A simple visit to the dentist can become a spectacular experiment. And it was one of my colleagues. He went to the dentist and he had to have an X-ray, and so he thought, I want to have a look at the effect the X-ray has on me. So he took a drop of his saliva and put it in a little tube and left it outside while he was having his X-ray taken. And after the X-ray, he again took some saliva and put it in another tube. And when he got back to the institute, he took some more saliva and put it in a third tube. And then he took the 3 different saliva samples and looked at them under a dark field microscope. And he could see the way his saliva looked before he had the X-ray at the dentist's, a short time later, and the way his saliva looked when he was back at the institute, and it had recovered somewhat. We thought that to be a highly interesting experiment.
Water plays a decisive role in everyday life in the preparation of food. Bakers in particular are aware of that. They consider Grander's water revitalization to be an insider's tip. When you consider that the rule of thumb is 2 parts flour, 1 part water, you realize how important water is.
Master baker Josef Schnallinger from Pramet in Upper Austria secretly installed water revitalization equipment at his bakery.
The bakers came to me and said, "The sourdough runs over every day. There must be something wrong. What's going on? Every day we stir up the same ingredients with a dough machine, and every day the dough runs over." That's how I discovered the power of Grander water. It's the only thing that could be doing that.
News of the special effect of the water spread like wildfire among the baking community.
Grander simply gave us the opportunity of taking a step forward. The dough has become more lively because of it. We use less yeast, but as a side effect, the dough takes up more water and simply makes the bread easier to digest. We get bread that has a smoother taste and stays fresh longer. For us, these are fundamentally important aspects. We no longer need additives like guar gum or swelling flour. Instead, we use high-quality flour and high-quality water, and with that combination we get results that others only get by using additives.
The news has even reached Italy. Massimo Grazioli of Milan is a baker heart and soul, and he too tried the experiment.
The bread certainly has a thinner crust, more refined taste, and is easier to digest because we use far less yeast, both natural and compressed yeast. It produces bread with a more tender crust and a more pronounced and regular texture. The taste is improved as well. Of course, you can bake bread without Grander water, but if you want higher quality and a real high-quality product, it helps enormously.
Experiments on water revitalization are being conducted in many different places in the world. Bangkok is home to the world's largest processor of exotic fruit. A special experiment was conducted at a cannery 300 kilometers south of the Thai capital.
An Austrian invention, water revitalization, was installed in the company's water system where thousands of tons of tropical fruits are processed for export. There was a measurable improvement in water quality and chemicals were substantially reduced. The company's production director was surprised by the results, especially with regard to processing the aloe vera plant, which requires a lot of water.
The most important that we can see is our aloe vera product. That's the aloe vera product is difficult to wash because of the slime in the aloe vera or aloin in the aloe vera. So when we use the candlelight water, we can see that the slime or aloin of the aloe vera is easy to wash. The second is our equipment or the machine. When we washing or the cleaning every day, we can find that the slime on the equipment or utensil is easy to wash, and we can use less effort than before.
At the administration building, there is a public swimming pool. It was only logical. If water revitalization has a positive effect on production, why not at the swimming pool? Swimming pool operators are all faced with the same problems, the smell of chlorine and the growth of algae in the water.
Before that, we need to maintain the cleanness of the water. So to be able to make water become clear, you need to add up more chlorine. And because we are in a closed space, so the chlorine smell, it's very irritating for the people who stay in the club. The smell, it's become less because we were able to use less chlorine, so like we can reduce about 50%. So the smell becomes decreased. And one thing that I have to add, we are able to maintain the pool easier. Before that, it always like have the green stuff. Every 3 weeks, we have to have a scuba tank to go into the pool to clean up the green algae. It doesn't grow anymore.
When we use the water in the industry, we have to solve the problem or the burden of using water with chemicals. And now we have an alternative that the granularized water works better than the chemicals.
As Eshel Ben Jacob warns, water is quite vulnerable.
If this is the case, as I mentioned before, we have to rethink the way that we treat our water.
In any case, one has to be extremely careful in dealing with water.
If water indeed has memory, the fact that we are so uncareful about the treatment of water can cause the water that we have to eventually to become non-suitable or stressful to organic systems. I don't want to sound as someone who brings a message now of a disaster, but it can happen. They will not be poisonous. They will not have some minerals that are not within the regulations, but they will be undrinkable in the sense that drinking this water will cause us some damage or will weaken our system as a whole. And more important is that if we treat the water this way, the bacteria that we cannot live without might go through dramatic changes and will not be able to function in supporting the environment that we see around.
the University of Technology in Graz not only studies mysterious water bridges, but also all other anomalies of water. There is clear recognition that water research is still in its early days, but ultra-modern measuring equipment continues to deliver astonishing results.
We measured water samples 20 times, always the same water with standardized methods, and 20 times we got different results. We got 20 curves that are different in this area here. We also measured propanol 20 times, and the curves matched almost perfectly.
For the layman, these are just a few curves. For the researchers, however, water remains an unpredictable element.
There are so many anomalies, more than 40 anomalies that include almost all the physical parameters: boiling point, melting point, surface tension, viscosity, refraction index, velocity of sound in water, conductance. Anomalies, anomalies. I mean things that you really cannot explain with conventional models. We certainly don't have any explanatory model for water that is entirely adequate. I do not really believe that, once we finally understood it, that the entire worldview of the natural sciences will have changed, but I do think we're in for a surprise.
Every research project raises more questions than it answers. Water will continue to be a topic of discussion for many generations of scientists to come.
I really feel that I'm only at the beginning of water research. And I think all I have to do is wonder how our world will look in 20, 30 or 40 years, you know. Probably our world will have identified these transmission phenomena that we're just now discovering. Some of them will have been identified as phenomena of oscillation, some of them as phenomena of imaging. And when we then systematize them, together with our research into consciousness and medicine, the knowledge will be transferable to the control processes of the body, and we will discover a preventive medicine capable of changing things at an early stage when there is anything wrong with the body.
Die Verstimmung eines Menschen schon verändert.
What we know is a drop. What we don't know is an ocean. Isaac Newton.
You have the characteristic of James Bond, and you have 00 in front of your name. Maybe you can tell if you shake or stir martini, the difference.